400 people died in Florida or in Orange County. If 400 people died of COVID in 1 year, people would have an uproar in Orange County. It is complete and utter nonsense that we allow these organizations to exist. Orange County is towards the top of the list of sex trafficking in Florida and in the U.S. There is no reason why our government has to focus on LGBTQ crap and not focus on this. Because 400 people died, it's trending in the right direction. Bullcrap. As long as one person dies from gang violence, the government has no right to lecture the moral citizens in the churches in our city to accept immorality on one end and then murder on the other. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this episode of the Gapfillers Podcast. This week, I'm going to leave Florida politics aside. We'll get into the governor's race more in depth in a future episode, and national politics and all that stuff of our usual. Today, I really want to discuss something that I've been irritated out all week, and it's been very irritating every time I think about it. But I started to do research on it, and it's a very touchy subject because we do live in a very safe country compared to pretty much everywhere in the world. If you go to another country, you're going to have to deal with this problem just the same. However, this problem is usually the government. Just frankly the way it is. However, I was watching a cop and law show, and I won't get into which one it was, but I was watching it with somebody, and I had to leave the room because I got infuriated that these cops went to investigate a disturbance, like it was like a suspected rape or violence or murder or something like that. And they went to this, let's just say, government housing project. And I understand this is fictional, of course, but it is kind of an underlying situation that we deal with in America. And this complex, nobody would talk to the police. Nobody. The government could not do what its main duty is to provide justice and the common defense. Those are only the two things that government is supposed to do. If you think about all the extra garbage that the U.S. government does, let alone any other government, that is the one thing that the government is supposed to do, is provide justice. And I understand that cops and stuff like that, people like that, the law goes above and beyond in a lot of places. But gang violence and gang intimidation should not be one of them. These cops were going to investigate, of course, again, fictional, but it got me doing some research, and nobody would talk to them because they're afraid of this gang. They didn't want to be a snitch. The problem is that by allowing that in your community, you're not fine. Whatever people think about drugs and stuff like that. Whatever, fine. I get the idea of wanting to be able to do that. Not that I support it at all. However, the idea that that's all gangs do and it's okay is beyond. It's not what they do. They go beyond that, and I want to get into that and dig into that in today's podcast, specifically here in Orlando. I'm going to take Orlando as the critique of how well and how safe and why we allow these gangs into our neighborhoods. So America has always had gangs since really the very beginning. You can almost consider the Sons of Liberty a sort of gang, in such a sense as it is a group of people that gather together to subvert the law. So it's a group of outlaws that have a more intricate organization level. Okay, and so rather than just be a couple of people or a couple of friends, it ends up being tens, dozens, hundreds of people, and in doing so, they can intimidate a local population. And I saw a lot of you may have heard of the Tren de Alagua taking control of apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. And now I've done my research into that, and the cops will claim that it's only a few people in the area. However, a few people are few motivated people are very capable of intimidating a large portion of the population into doing what they want. It doesn't take dozens of people. It doesn't take mass intimidation. It takes very specific intimidation, and then knowing the cops are either unable or unwilling to do anything about it, and then the justice system sometimes supports these people with allowing them out on parole early, and back into the streets, like we've seen in New York with that guy that was a cop killer and flicking off the camera, stuff like that. So we've seen that, and that allows for mass intimidation to take place with very, very few people. I mean, think about how we view the police, and law-abiding citizens view the police, and we think they have this mass presence when they have only a 1 to 200 one cop to 200 people, sometimes even up to 1,000 people under their jurisdiction. So police forces end up being very, very small portions of the population. Now, for what they are very effective in that ratio, right? If you were 0.2% of the population, you were able to have a fairly assertive grip on society, I actually do consider that a success. However, we in America we think that because there's not thousands of people dying in our city a year, that's a success, right? I have this stat from 2023. It went from 470 people in Orange County to 441, and they considered that a success. Yes, it's in the right direction, but why are we allowing these people to exist at all on our streets? I get that we allow a certain amount of people, we have to have civil rights, and without that, that's tyranny. And that's the tyranny of the one that is cited. But the tyranny of the 1,000 is just as bad, if not worse, because the tyranny of the 1,000 does not have the moral code. They do not have civil rights. They have the pure intimidation and violence and drugs and sex trafficking and all these myriad of illegal activity that goes beyond that, an immoral and destructive activity that goes with their form of government, to say the least. Now, I think the government does fail massively at this situation. Okay, so take this, okay? Now, I grew up in Orange County, and frankly, I was in a very safe household. However, I did not realize I grew up in such a risky neighborhood, because I was very sheltered. I was very not. I didn't live under a rock. However, it wasn't like I had friends in the neighborhood, and thank God I didn't. It's just one of these areas. So I just figured out that two of the worst gangs in Orlando, which is in Orange County rather, that is on the east side of Orlando. I didn't know that. I figured it was all in Pine Hills. I figured it was all, in that part of town, in Paramore, on Paramore Street, on Church Street. That's where I thought the crime was. Frankly, it happened. MS-13 and the Latin Kings are in my own backyard. Now, why do we allow that? I know people who have taken drugs and support drug use and stuff like that. And some of you may watch this podcast. However, the idea that we support, that people are willing to support this kind of activity in our own backyard. 400 people died in Florida or in Orange County. If 400 people died of COVID in 1 year, people would have an uproar in Orange County. It is complete and utter nonsense that we allow these organizations to exist. Orange County is towards the top of the list of sex trafficking in Florida and in the U.S. There is no reason why our government has to focus on LGBTQ crap and not focus on this. Because 400 people died, it's trending in the right direction. Bullcrap. As long as one person dies from gang violence, the government has no right to lecture the moral citizens in the churches in our city to accept immorality on one end and then murder on the other. And then it's, murder is okay, 400 people, okay? Their socioeconomical status is why they did that. No, they are in a gang. They view it as clout. They view it as prestige. They view it as a perverse form of purpose, okay? Because they belong to something. Right? So if we as a society are going to accept that, we are going to implode. And it's only made worse by immigration and illegal immigration, which I'm glad to hear that we've had net negative for the first time in 50 years as a country. However, we have allowed this to fester over the last 100 years, starting with the mob and the mafia in the 20s, and then purveying itself all the way through now. Okay, now, and they tend to always be these immigrant gangs, the local immigrant population that comes in, right? So it starts off, the Irish, and then it goes to the Italians, with Al Pacino. Oh no, not Al Pacino. Wow, I'm forgetting his name. Anyways, so you go all the way through, and then you have the major drug problems of the 70s, and that leads into the gang wars of the 80s, and then so on and so on. But we continue to allow this form of cancer in our society to fester just because of poor people are going to be violent. That's the excuse. And that is utter garbage, because there are poor people all over the U.S. that do not commit violence. Okay, poor farmers, poor Appalachians that don't commit this kind of violence. They're not gangs. They accept their status in life, and they're not reaching for a handout every time you turn around. And where the most money is spent in our city is in this kind of where the net negative in our city is spent in communities like this. So we have this huge problem in Orlando, and we are considered one of the highest drug areas, or highest human trafficking areas in the country. And we allow that. First of all, there's a certain amount of foreigners coming in, not immigrants or illegal immigrants even. I'm talking foreigners coming in because we're a high tourist area. And that allows for disadvantages of social and cultural norms to be taken advantage of. Okay, because you also have this gang called the Brothers Circle, and it's the same kind of crap. Well, they deal more on fraud and cybercrime, and they come from Central Asia, and so we allow these people to fester in our communities, these gangs, and where does that leave us? That leaves us afraid to walk around our neighborhood at night. It allows and it really has started. A huge part of it has come into with the fracturing of our society. We are no longer a uniculture. We have a gang for every kind of culture, frankly, except for white now. And so, all right, the Klan, obviously wrong, right? And they're a bunch of retarded people, right? Okay, so how many people at the peak of the Klan activity? How many people were lynched a year, right? So you can consider the KKK a Klan, a gang. How many people on average? All right, at the height, it was only 150. No, 150, bad, right? 400 gang violent murders in Orange County alone. That's not Chicago, that's not New York, that's not LA, that's not pick a city. That is Orange County. 400. That is a year. That is more than the Klan did a year at its peak. It says something to us about us that we can take down as a society the immorality of something like the Klan, but we're willing to accept on a large scale level gang activity in our own neighborhoods. And I blame the government, obviously. I blame us. I believe that the people who live in those places are either scared or they're complicit. Those are the two things that they can be. Obviously, you're scared if they're going to kick in your door and murder, steal, rape. Okay, if they're going to do, obviously you're intimidated. But the idea that that's what we don't focus on, but we're focusing on speeding down I-4, or we're speeding down a certain area, and this is what was described to me. Okay, when I first got to my unit in the Army, my platoon sergeant was from California, and he said, now obviously he was probably one of these people I'm talking to that was more complicit, right? He was more, it's just a gang. But he told me, welcome to the biggest gang in the world. And I'm like, a gang? We're not in a gang. But what is a gang? A gang is a group of people that try to assert law or their rules onto a group of people within a certain area. So a lot of gangs are a form of anti-governments, so to speak. Okay, they try to subvert the law and assert their own rules. As long as they're making money, as long as the IRS gets their check, they can leave you alone, right? As long as you don't step out of line with a rival gang, they'll leave you alone, right? And so you can almost think of nation states as large gangs. However, if a gang does not assert their authority through violence, through intimidation, they cease to be a gang, or their territory is intruded on. And this is the peak irony about why governments allow this, is because it doesn't make sense, because they by allowing these gangs to operate in their territory, they lose control, right? And governments, city governments in particular, and federal governments, state governments, whatever you want to, whichever government size you want to blame. The idea is that we, as a society, accept it. You know, it until it affects somebody in our family, maybe, and there'll be an uproar. And ironic, you know, if the cops take down somebody that was wrong, you know, the wrong person, there'll be an uproar against the cops, but there won't be an uproar around the gang, about the gang. There won't. We accept more virtue from gang members than we do from our own police. Now, this is not a bootlicking session. There needs to be proper protocol and not intimidation for the righteous, for the innocent. However, the Bible clearly states that the wicked should fear the righteous. That the proper role of government is to suppress the wicked, and we allow it. We allow it in our country, and it's sad. I stayed much calmer than I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to be screaming. Maybe it's because I've talked to several people about this and I've gotten my anger out. But I want you to. The goal of this podcast right now, today, is to think about where we stand as a society. Should we allow more immigrants in when we can barely control our current population? That's the basic gist of the matter today. If the government does not get rid of these gangs, if it does not get rid of, if it is more willing to prosecute the person that misses their taxes as opposed to kill somebody or intimidates a population, then the government becomes illegitimate. And it is only a matter of time before either a bigger gang takes over or the righteous stand up and take matters into their own hands. And I see that a very far long way off, because frankly, we are very apathetic as a country. We'll individually be great. You know, we'll be able to post something on X or YouTube or Facebook, but to organize a group of innocent citizens that are fed up with the way their society is going is very dangerous, for one, because it either means you either have to go into that legal activity, like, you know, the black market and stuff like that, or it means you risk losing your job at the very least, or it means the government goes after you. And the government is probably more willing to go after you than these people. And that is the risk that we are having in today's society. Either we don't stand up and we're intimidated, or we stand up, and the people who are supposed to be putting it down put us down instead, because that would be a threat, it's a mar against their job. So thank you for joining me. If you like this podcast, I know this was a little bit of a rant day, but if you like this podcast, subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on X at Gapfillers1776. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for joining me, and have a good week. I'll see you in the next video.